In 1995, produced by TriStar Pictures and distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing, was Jumanji. It was based on a picture book from 1981. The film hardened that within the American state of New Hampshire, Alan lived with his parents. Through events in the film, Alan discovers a magical board game buried from the year of 1869, as Alan decides to take it with him back to his family's home. Alan had an argument with his father about attending a boarding school. Deciding to run away from home, Sarah actually comes to Alan's home to try and see if he's alright. Alan shows her the game as the both decide to play. The game's play was that with each roll of the dice, game pieces would move by themselves, and players had to determine how to solve the question shown within a crystal at the center of the playing board. But when Alan rolls his dice and has to play, he's distracted and doesn't notice his clue that he has to remain within the jungle until another player rolls a 5 or an 8 on the dice. Alan is sucked into the game, while Sarah doesn't understand what she had just seen and is chased out of the home by bats. In 1995, Judy and Peter Shepard move into the now vacant parish home with their aunt. After Judy and Peter's parents died in a tragic accident during a holiday to Canada the previous winter. Looking through the home and hearing the tragic circumstances of Alan's disappearance, Sarah was considered mad due to telling people about the board game, as when the parish shoe company closed, it devastated the entire region of the state, with massive job losses. Events within the movie has Judy and Peter discover the game and notice that there are already 2 pieces on it. Not knowing about Alan and Sarah, they put their own 2 pieces onto the game and become a part of it. Alan is released from the game, only to find out that 26 years have passed, and both his parents are dead. The town is a former shell of itself, and Sarah has been branded the local mad woman, for when Alan disappeared, she was ridiculed and partially blamed for his disappearance. Having no choice but to continue the game through circumstances depicted in the film, the group discover the insane powers of the game and try to survive against all sorts of threats until the game is finally completed. Once completed, Alan and Sarah are put back into 1969, surprised that the game is so powerful enough that it can even affect time itself. Alan, filled with decades of regret, later sees his father and mentions that he's sorry for arguing with him. His father decides that he doesn't have to go to the boarding school if he doesn't want to, and leaves him with Sarah. The both of them realize that they still have memories of the future, even though the game reset itself in terms of time, which is a slight paradox, as Alan and Sarah dispose of the box into a local river. The film ends with everything being marvelous, as the final scene shows the board game having been washed out of the United States through the Atlantic Sea, and currents actually take it ashore to a French beach. A pair of girls happen to discover the board game as the scene fades to black. The movie earned $262 million against a budget of $65 million, as it was a critically hailed film with critics as well as audiences of the time, and became one of the best known films of the 1990s, as the popularity of Jumanji was so apparent that an animated series based on the film was broadcasted originally on United States networks from 1996 through 1999 for a total of 3 seasons. The cartoon was considered somewhat of a different interpretation of the film, with major differences from the movie being that of Sarah Whittle not included at all within the series, on the fact that the magic of the Jumanji board game from the picture book would affect the real world within real time, as anyone in the cartoon whom were to play the game would be sucked into it automatically to play. This difference was later used in the 2017 reboot on films associated with it. Differences with the characters had it that Alan was trapped within the game since he was a child, and could only get out of the game if he had seen his original clue. According to online sources, Alan was trapped within the game on the 3rd of April 1972, but in the 1995 film, the year when Alan was sucked into the board game was 1969. Within the film, Alan had the demeanor of a man whom had been hardened by his experiences in the jungle, and even to an extent he was ruthless. In the series, he was a little bit more comical as well as more cautious or even fearful. Alan's clue within the film was that he had to be held within the game until another player rolled either a 5 or an 8 with the dice, as mentioned. The cartoon version had it that he was freed from the game by pulling a thorn from a lion's paw, which was somewhat ironic as when Alan was first transported within the jungle, he had seen the very lion that he was supposed to help. But due to circumstances, he was too shocked and frightened as a child to remove the thorn, as he had often seen the lion throughout his time in the jungle. As eventually, when the series ended, he was able to remove the thorn from the lion's paw, and he had often wondered why he had seen that lion so often. It's because that lion was a part of his clue, but Alan had never figured that out. Within the film, Alan desired to run away from the parish home and the shoe business that his father had built, as Alan was very bitter towards his own father, and by Sarah, Judy and Peter he had made amends with him. The cartoon version had Alan being more cautious or even fearful, as mentioned. It even went to the extent that he considered Judy and Peter to be his family, and that his worst fear is that he would never find what his clue was to be, and he would die within Jumanji, while Judy and Peter wasted their lives trying to free him. Within the film, Judy was a balance between the more stern yet humorous Alan and the childlike, often mistake-making Peter. The cartoon version of Judy had her being more intelligent and often witty, sometimes taking control of the situation due to the lack of control exerted by Alan or Peter. Judy was also very sociable, as in the cartoon boys often liked her, and this detail was mentioned in multiple episodes. Within the film, Peter was childlike and innocent, but observing yet attentive. Within the cartoon, Peter was clearly immature, foolish, and often at odds with Judy. In the cartoon, Peter often attempted to break or bend the rules of the game, and as a result he was often changed into animals, which was a reference to the film where he was shown as a monkey. While the film itself was light-hearted, details about Jumanji were intentionally left vague. The cartoon had further details of the game that were filled in to give more of a backstory to the game, as these details were darker in comparison to the film. As in the film, for example, due to Alan's argument with his father, he became more stern and angry. This had helped him to survive when he shifted into the game. However, as mentioned within the cartoon, Alan was more comical and light-hearted. As details had it in this series that Alan would have never survived in the jungle without help from Judy and Peter, who, through events in the series, time traveled to help a younger version of Alan. In the film, it was never mentioned technically if any player had ever died due to the game's magic or not completing their turn or even completing the game. In the cartoon, it was mentioned by Alan that through his own experiences on learning about Jumanji's details, that there have been other children as well as people to have been sucked into the game, and through circumstances some had even died by not being able to either survive within the jungle or killed through circumstances relating to their clues for play. The game of Jumanji itself, both in the original film and the 1996 series, were arguably shown to have some sort of sentience or consciousness. As in the film, it opened and closed by itself. As in the cartoon, it went even further, as it sucked Judy and Peter into the game without rolling the dice to play a turn. Sometimes a character can be forgotten because a cartoon had more details about the characters than the film. Later, future film adaptations used some of the same details that the cartoon first implemented because the cartoon itself had brilliant screenwriting and was not appreciated during its time.